In a statement on social media, Zelensky said the partial ceasefire could be one of the first steps towards fully ending the war. I supported this step, and Ukraine confirmed that we are ready to implement it. My next guest says he doesn't share Zelensky's optimism. The same man who told me when the ceasefire was announced between Israel and Hamas, this won't last that long. And of course, he was right about that also. President, founder of the Eurasia Group, Ian Bremmer, joins me now. Good to see you again, my friend.
Chris, good to see you, man.
So I get it now. You helped me understand in the podcast. You guys can check out the Chris Cuomo Project with Ian, where he lays this out in more depth and breadth. But I get it. Putin has power. Trump's got to be worried about China more than he has to be worried about Ukraine. Putin plays by the rules with Trump, deferential, so he wants to talk to him. But doesn't he see what Putin is doing right now as the reality of what's going to happen here?
He really wants to end the war. So, I mean, you mentioned the Israel-Gaza ceasefire, which lasted as long as it was convenient for the Israelis, and now it's over. But I'd bring you back to the Afghanistan war, and when Trump, at the end of his first term, really wanted to get those American troops out, and he cut a deal with the Taliban, and he went over the heads of the Afghan government that the U.S. had been providing a lot of money to, but it wasn't very stable. And he didn't engage with the Europeans or the other countries that had sent troops to fight shoulder to shoulder with the Americans. He did it himself. And that's, the stakes are, of course, much, much higher when we're talking about Russia, Ukraine, especially for our allies in Europe. But it's a very similar playbook, which is Trump really wants to end the war, and he is not as concerned about the knock-on consequences for the allies or even for the Ukrainians. He doesn't want Ukraine to have their country overrun, and we can talk about what he's doing to try to ensure that, but he's certainly willing to give Putin a better deal than the Europeans would give him, than another president would give him. Why? Because he wants to say, I'm the guy that ended this war. And that has been the orientation that you've seen from Trump ever since that first call about a month ago, the 90-minute call that he had with Putin before the Riyadh meetup between the cabinets of both countries.
So all right, you put your finger right on it. I want to end the war. I don't care what that means as long as Ukraine stays Ukraine in some way, shape, or form. But other than that, I don't care because my constituency doesn't want us involved in anything abroad anyway, so I don't care about the knock-on consequences. What's the mistake with that?
Oh, I mean, one is how much do you value having coordination with the Europeans, who have been some of the most steadfast allies of the United States in terms of values and standards and votes and institutions and all the rest. I mean, if you don't think it's that important because you think they're free riders and long term, you're happy to have the United States sort of dictate the rules, and it doesn't matter if they have many friends on the global stage or not, then maybe there's not much wrong with that, right? I mean, there's no question that Biden could have pushed the Ukrainians into a ceasefire. I mean, he didn't. He wasn't willing to push the Ukrainians because for him, he was willing to spend the money. What was most important was being in lockstep every day with the Europeans, with the Canadians. So you could argue the war lasted a lot longer than it should have, and a lot more people were killed than they should have. And that's a real negative. But at the same time, the American relationship with the Europeans was stronger and stronger, even as the Europeans were starting to spend much more on defense, not as much as Trump would like, not as much as most American citizens would like, but NATO was heading in the right direction. Now, here you have a situation in the first several weeks of Trump where he immediately gets the Ukrainians to accept a 30-day ceasefire without any conditions by showing that he's willing to hit the Ukrainians really hard, and they don't have leverage. But he does that also undermining his relationship with the Europeans, who now aren't going to buy as many American weapons. They're going to spend a lot more on defense, but they're going to do it independently from the United States. So short term, that's a win for the United States. Long term, I would argue that undermining a collective security agreement in favor of a better relationship with a much weaker Russia that has a tiny economy that, exports a lot of oil that we certainly don't need in the United States, I wouldn't make that trade. but that's not Trump's calculation.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget, click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.